Hello crafty friends, it's Jess from jesscrafts.com, and today I have a birthday shaker card featuring Newton's Nook designs. When I started, I knew that I was going to be creating a shaker card, and I knew that I wanted it to be a birthday card, so I pulled out the Simply Sentimental for the happy birthday sentiment and Newton's birthday flutter for the balloon. But then I wasn't sure what critter I wanted to pair with it, so I pulled out two different sets here, but I do eventually go with the Sweetheart Tales raccoon. He is one of my all-time favorite critters from Newton's Nook. I wanted to pull some pattern papers because I will be using a pattern paper to put the creature on, and then I will also be stamping that raccoon onto some pattern paper before I color him in, just to give more of a paper piecing effect. Plus, I knew that I wanted some elements inside the shaker to have the pattern, so I knew I'd be stamping down some balloons for inside the shaker, and I eventually decided on some hearts. I picked this yellow paper for my background, partly because it was already cut, and so it had that stitched rectangle panel on it already, and it was great to use up some scraps. But I also knew that it would work out really great because I'd be stamping a sentiment onto it, and I didn't want my sentiment to blend too much into a pattern, so you don't want a really busy pattern for your sentiment. I'm stamping my sentiment in VersaFine Jet Black's Onyx ink because I want to make sure that it is really crisp, and in fact I will be putting some clear embossing powder over that VersaFine ink to, again, just make sure that the sentiment is really dark and crisp, because not only is it on a piece of pattern paper, but it will also be seen through this page protector. I'm going to be creating my shaker with the fuse tool. Traditional shaker cards have not worked out well for me, so I decided to try the fuse tool. I'm going to be taping this paper panel inside a We Are Memory Keeper's page protector, and then I'll be using the fuse tool to seal up 3 of the sides. You only want to seal up 3 of the sides at first, and then add your shaker material. If you seal up all of the sides, you won't be able to add anything inside. You have to let the fuse tool, heat up for about 10 minutes before you use it so that it has reached its final temperature. And with the fuse tool, you definitely want to be careful. It has a little bit of a short cord, and so if you have pets, you want to make sure that they're not going to knock it over, or children the same way, because it is really hot. It's obviously going to melt the plastic, and so it could burn you, so be careful with it. But it also has this great metal ruler, and it has a stand that allows the tool to sit there, so it does hold it somewhat in place, but it could be knocked down. I like this metal ruler because it helps you to create a straight line as you are moving the tool along, and you want to move it rather slowly. And I am doing this at 2 times speed, the video here, so you're going to be moving a little bit slower than it looks like I'm moving. But I was able to get a good seal on my first go round with this card. If you go too slow, it will burn a hole in the plastic, or if you go too fast, it won't seal it. Like I said, since I was able to be successful my first time through, I think that it's pretty clear about the right speed to go, but I would just experiment it with on an extra piece of plastic if you weren't sure. Another thing that I like about this ruler is that it has these little cushions on the end of it, which make sure it doesn't slip. You see that I added an extra mat in the top of my Ranger craft sheet, just because the Ranger craft sheet is very thin and slippery, and I didn't want to burn my table underneath. I wanted to create some little elements for inside my shaker card. So I took the dies from the Newton's Nap Time set, and there are little hearts. You could stamp the hearts and then die cut them, but because I was just putting them in my shaker card, I decided to cut up the hearts. I thought that it would pair well with the raccoon because he's holding a little heart in his hands, and so there could also be some hearts inside the shaker card. And I will use a similar pink pattern paper to stamp the heart that he's holding for later on as well. I also wanted to add some balloons as shaker material because I'm doing a birthday card, and so rather than just the sequins, I thought some balloons would be fun, so I stamped those on a coordinating blue pattern paper from the same collection. Now I'm ready to add all of my elements inside the shaker. The balloons I fussy cut because that set doesn't have a die. There will be some dies released for older stamp sets, as the first die set from Newton's was successful, and as you know, you may have got a chance to vote on release day for which stamp sets you would like to, old stamp sets you would like to see as die sets as well. So if you have any feedback on which older sets you'd like to see in dies, it is useful to know as Newton goes forward and tries to figure out which ones will be excellent to see as dies as well, and what customers are interested in. I added all my balloons in and also the hearts that I die cut, but I wanted to add some sequins too for that extra sparkle. I have these sequins from My Style Stamps. I like their sequins because they're really sparkly and they're also a really great price, just $1 a pack. I started with some yellow sequins because I didn't want them to take too much attention away from the hearts and the balloons inside. But I found that I wanted a little bit more color, so I also put in some of these darker pink sequins. Then lastly, I chose these little seed beads that were golden color, again to match a little bit more with the yellow paper, not take too much attention away, but since I could add so much and know that all my sides would be sealed, I got a little bit carried away and added quite a bit. Now, with the metal ruler, it is a little hard to tell if you are exactly parallel to the piece that you are sealing in and exactly where your ruler is. And so at first I was just trying to estimate it, line it up with my grid mat. And then it occurred to me that I could turn my shaker over and my ruler over, line it up so it was parallel where I could see it on the back side so that I could see the plastic shaker and I could see where the ruler line was laying. So you see here, I finally figured it out. I've turned it upside down. I'm checking to see that that line in the ruler is parallel with my my pattern paper piece, and then I'm taking a little bit of washi tape and taping it down. You want to make sure your washi tape isn't actually in the part that you'll be sealing, but a little bit off to the side. And now I can make sure that my line is exactly where I want it. And I was so happy to figure this out because that was the one thing that was frustrating me about this tool, is getting that exact line where I wanted it. And so then I have it sealed up and I can trim off the edges where the shaker is sealed. I wanted to add my critter on top of the shaker. I felt like if I added the critter fussy cut out inside the shaker, then the sequins and beads and little shaker bits would get caught on the critter. And so it would be better to add him to the outside. Also, it would make him a little bit more prominent because he wouldn't be covered in shaker material all the time. I stamped the raccoon on this gray pattern paper, also from Lawn Fun, and I'm going to be coloring him in with Copics. Because this is a pattern paper, it is not as thick or heavy as your standard Copic paper, and so it doesn't take quite as much ink and is more likely to bleed. But if you do some simple, maybe 2-color blending, and you don't add too much ink, you can get a little bit of Copic blending. And so here I'm just using 2 colors of W markers at a time. I'm using W5, 3, and 1. So for my darker areas, I'm mixing the 5 with the 3, and my lighter areas, I'm mixing the 3 with the 1. I found that I wanted to eventually to just color the whole thing. I had tried to just color some parts of it, but then the pattern stood out a little bit too much to me, so I went over and colored the entire thing. I also stamped that in the My Favorite Things Black Licorice Hybrid ink because it will not bleed with the Copic coloring. Finally, I stamped just the heart part of the raccoon on a scrap of pink paper so that I could fussy cut it out and layer it onto the raccoon so that it would coordinate with the pink hearts that are inside the shaker. I've added plenty of adhesive to my shaker panel, and then I'm just taping it onto my card base here, and as you can see, it creates a shaker card really easily that shakes around with no problems. I usually have little bits of those beads falling out because no matter how hard I try, I can't get a perfect seal with foam tape. But this fuse tool made it a lot easier and made it for a much quicker and more successful shaker card for me. So I've taped on that little raccoon, and that's going to be it for the card today. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you're interested in the products, I'm going to leave them in the video description below so you can check out Newton's Nook. Also, if you like more crafty videos, card tutorials, Copic coloring tutorials and such, you can subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching. Bye.